Good day, and welcome to this New York Foreign Press Center briefing on protecting the rights of persons with disabilities. My name is Daphne Stavropoulos, and I'm today's moderator. It's a pleasure to introduce our speakers. Sara Minkara serves as the U.S. Special Advisor on International Disability Rights, a position she has held since November of 2021. Mr. Vladimir Chok is the Executive Director of the International Disability Alliance. This briefing is on the record, and with all of our briefings, I will add this disclaimer that views expressed by briefers not affiliated with the Department of State are their own and don't necessarily reflect those of the US government. If you've not had the opportunity to do so, please ensure your full name and media outlet appear on the screen. And following our speaker's remarks, I will open the floor for questions. If you have a question, go to the participant field and raise your virtual hand and wait for me to call on you. And when called on, please enable both your audio and your video and identify yourself by full name and outlet. And with that, it's a pleasure to turn the floor over to Special Advisor Minkara. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Daphne, and thank you to the amazing team that's with us today, and thank you to Vlad. I'm honored to be with you all here today. So I'm going to give some brief remarks in terms of what we're doing here in New York, share some of our priorities, then dive into kind of talking a little bit about our work in disability in Ukraine and disability inclusive democracy. And then I'm going to end with talking about the GLAAD network and hand it over to Vlad. So we're here in New York because it's COSP 15, Conference of State Parties, that happens every year here at the UN, where people and organizations and individuals come together to really discuss what are issues surrounding disability inclusion, ranging from topics climate and disability, to disability inclusive democracy, to COVID and disability, and so much more. We're here, we've just finished our site session that we hosted, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We are having many bilateral and multilateral meetings with our partners. And then we're participating in other site sessions and also participating in our first GLAAD meeting as co-chairs. But just briefly, I've shared this earlier a few months ago, but just to kind of give you guys a summary on our priorities, which will connect to what we're here. So first, one of our main priorities is fostering accountability and building capacity. It's really important for us as we are really traveling the world and working with different governments and countries to really support in building capacity and helping governments uphold their commitments when it comes to disability policies, right? And we've recently did a trip to Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. And earlier we did a trip to Lebanon, Egypt, Morocco, and Kuwait. And during those trips, we actually had a lot of great outcomes and deliverables. One example is, the ratification of the CRPD in Lebanon. Our second priority, which is related to what we just hosted earlier today, it's promoting disability inclusive democracy. As we all know, the democracy commitment is an important commitment for the Biden administration, and we want to make sure disability inclusive lens is part of that conversation. We believe that for a country and for our global community to achieve full prosperity, peace, and security, everyone needs to be included. And when we say everyone, that means also persons with disabilities. From accessing voting rights to political participation to development of policies, let's make sure persons with disabilities are part of that conversation, but not just from a rights-based perspective, it's from a value-based perspective. How do we really get our systems to believe that the inclusion of persons with disabilities into our democratic process is a value for everyone? And when we really put forward that value-based narrative, we tend to then find ways and solutions and address challenges to really include persons with disabilities into our democratic process. And we just finished a side event that was virtual, and it was co-hosted by IFES, and we had speakers ranging from Assistant Secretary Lisa Peterson from the State Department to Senator Koltieva from Kazakhstan to Lisolet Correa from Mexico, INE in Mexico, to Senator Raz Adiba from Malaysia, and to Michelle Hovsepian from Armenia, from Disability Rights Agenda. And we had an amazing conversation, dialogue in terms of what are best practices out there, what are challenges, and how can we look at this from an adaptive lens than a technical lens. Our third priority, which is advancing human rights in moments of crisis. As we all know, persons with disabilities during most moments of crisis are forgotten, left behind, and if they are seen, they're seen from a pity lens. We're focusing on how do we make sure persons with disabilities needs are addressed and also seen as a source of solution and value when we're talking about response and negotiations and peace and rebuilding. We're focusing a lot on Ukraine and disability, and we've done a lot of work both internally within the State Department, externally in terms of organizing a bi-weekly international NGO working group to really make sure that the conversation, dialogue surrounding Ukraine and disability is on the forefront of people's minds. And then last but not least is our priority is disrupting the narrative surrounding disability, moving from a charity lens to a value-based lens, which I kind of referenced earlier. Ultimately you can have all the policies and all the legislations, right? But who implements the policies? It's the people. And how do we really make sure people see the value in the inclusion of persons with disabilities, don't see it as a favor, as an add-on, as a charity, or as just the right thing to do, but truly believe it brings value to society at large. Last thing, and then I'll hand it over to Vlad. We are honored and excited that we will be joining, the US government will be joining as co-chair to the GLAAD network. The GLAAD network was founded in 2015, and it is a coordination of bodies, bilateral, multilateral agencies, donors and agencies, private and public foundations, and a coalition of disability movement organizations coming together to really move forward the needle in the conversation around disability, inclusive development, and humanitarian action. How do we make sure that that is at the forefront of people's mind, and how do we make sure that we are kind of disrupting the status quo when we're talking about disability inclusive development? So I'm honored to kind of hand it over to Vladimir Chuk, who is the Executive Director of International Disability Alliance and the permanent co-chair to GLAAD. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. This is a very great moment for us. And actually, this is the first moment that we are publicly saying that we will be co-chairing a GLAAD together. So welcome, Sarah, and welcome US government to this important role. GLAAD is a network of donors and foundations and the UN, as Sarah mentioned a little bit previously, that is tasked to promote this disability inclusive development and humanitarian action. And why is that? Because we noticed that we did receive a lot of political commitments over time, and in many cases, in many moments of time, global leaders, world leaders were really strongly committing to promoting disability rights, but never these political commitments were followed up with the concrete financial and the human resources commitments. So this part was never there enough, at least. Or when it was happening in such a small way and a slow, progressive way. So we wanted to create this network, and it was first made with the UK government, and then leadership was took over from with DFAT Australia, and then back to UK, and then Norway, and now US will take this leadership together with us forward. This is incredibly important because without financial commitments and the human resources commitments to development, we cannot advance, and we cannot include 1 billion persons with disabilities in a sustainable development. And without those, we cannot have sustainable development. So it is incredibly important. And what we notice is that really this network is one of, or maybe the most impactful tool that disability rights movement globally have today. And that is, so Sarah, you are coming into very instrumental role, and we can do a lot, and especially now hopefully coming out of COVID crisis, let's say like that, and faced with the Ukraine war, faced with the financial crisis that is looming every day more and more. So now it's more than ever when typically world leaders says disabilities may be not so important right now, let's deal with that next week. And we should remind them that no, we have to talk about that right now. So Sarah, it is critical that we have now leadership from somebody like US, that is a world leader in so many things, that can now take a charge with us and to remind the world that the time to act is now. So thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you so much for those opening remarks. We'll open the floor for questions. If you have a question, please raise your virtual hand or type your question in the chat, and I'm happy to either call on you or read your question in the chat to our speakers. And I can start by asking Special Advisor Minkara, how do disability rights intersect with other global issues like climate crisis or gender inequality?
I mean, and disability rights intersect with all segments, all issues, all sectors within our society. Let me give an example, like for instance, you mentioned climate change, right? So climate change, when there's a climate disaster that happens, that goes back to the crisis conversation. A lot of time, the way a country or city responds, persons with disabilities are not part of the response, are not included, or the response is not accessible for persons with disabilities. So how do we make sure that a country is taking into consideration the perspective of persons with disability into how we respond to crisis? How do we make sure also persons with disabilities are part of the long-term solution in addressing climate change? Because people with disabilities are like any other community, there's value to be brought forward. So disability in general intersects with all aspects within our society, in our system.
Thank you so much. I wonder, Mr. Chok, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely, it is very important. I mean, Sarah said it very well, but maybe to say a little bit more, that the climate change and climate action is a really feel that we as the International Disability Alliance and the GLAAD want to really look very carefully into. We did not enough connect disability rights with the climate change. There was no understanding that we need to speak with 1 billion people, which is maybe little bit shocking, right? So I think that in this year and next year, we should be really focusing a lot of our time on connecting climate change and disability rights. Typically, in any crisis situation, whether it is war, but also climate and nature-induced crisis, persons with disabilities are those that are usually left behind. And this is a rule that applies for Global South and Global North. If you remember any climate crisis in the last 20 years, there's horrific stories about persons with disabilities left in the homes, permanent homes, specialized schools, institutions, simply because nobody thought about how we will be rescuing the disabled people that maybe need help, assistance, transportation, etc., etc. So this we need to change. So for the first time in the conference in Glasgow last year, UNCCC Climate Change Conference, for the first time disability has been recognized as a stakeholder group. So now we have actually space through which we will be in the future influencing. And maybe we will be looking at how can we align GLAAD work with the next meeting that will be happening in Sharm el Sheikh in October.
COP27, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
In Egypt, yep, yeah, exactly.
So that is a task for Sarah and I to think through.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for that. I do have a question in the chat, but before we do that, perhaps we could just pivot just a little bit. I think the anniversary of the ADA is next month. And maybe Special Advisor Minkara, you can just tell us a little bit about the anniversary and ADA and why it's important.
So yes, the ADA's anniversary is next month in July, and July is Disability Pride Month. And the ADA was established in 1990, and it is a legislation, a law, policy that really allowed persons with disabilities in the U.S. to be able to live their full life. And I, as a person with disability who was born and raised in the U.S., I can personally testify how much it really allowed me to, receive inclusive education, have the right for employment, all aspects of our, of what a person in their livelihood, what they should be living in an inclusive world. So, and the ADA has influence and was part of the influence of the development of the CRPD, the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And ultimately, it really showcases that a person with disability has value to society. Let's make sure that the system that we're in is accessible and inclusive for all, so we can be able to contribute to our world.
Thank you so much. This next question comes in from the chat. It is from a journalist based in DC, Zaharan from Al Aram. Tell us more about your program in Egypt and what is your opinion of the efforts Egypt has taken towards people with disabilities in Egypt?
So we visited Egypt in March, and we had a wide range of meetings with members of parliaments of persons with disabilities, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Social Affairs, even civil society. So a wide range of meetings. And we also met with their National Council on Disability, Dr. Iman. And one of the outcomes that we're taking forward is, there's the Law 18 that was developed, adopted a few years ago, which is a comprehensive law on disability inclusion. And now the next step is how do we make sure the implementing the law. And one of the requests from us was, providing technical expertise surrounding how can we support the NCD, their National Council on Disability, in terms of the implementation of the law. And there's a lot to learn from here in the US. We have over 50 years of experience in terms of adaptation of law and adoptions of law, and also the implementation and our National Council on Disability. So that is something that we are continuing the conversation and working with them on.
Thank you so much. In your opening remarks, you had mentioned some progress that you had noted in Lebanon, and you've just now talked about Egypt. I wonder if you could also talk about some of the deliverables that came of your visits to other countries in the Middle East and South and Central Asia.
Yeah, definitely. To give another example, in Tajikistan, they have a action plan to really move towards the ratification of the CRPD, and we had meetings with the Minister of Labor, the Ministry of Health, and other entities within the government. And one of our outcomes is how do we keep supporting their plan towards moving towards the ratification of their CRPD. So again, providing technical expertise. Another example, in Morocco, we met with the Ministry of Social Solidarity, Minister Awatif, who is very much committed towards inclusive education. And one of the outcomes is how do we continue supporting and providing technical expertise surrounding inclusive education. So there's a wide range of kind of outcomes in each country. And one of our goals is to kind of really build capacity, as I mentioned in our first priority, and really allow for, there to be kind of shared responsibility, building capacity, and taking the work forward. There's a lot that we can learn from each other and sharing best practices, and that's what we're hoping to keep on doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can ask another, Pearl, I'd rather ask your question, or have you asked your own question? Go ahead, Pearl.
Hi, Daphne. Thank you so much. Very interesting to hear the briefers today. So I just want to thank you, Sarah, and your colleague here. So my question to you is: you described, places where you've traveled to the world, and these what I can say key pillars that you're working on, which is tremendous work. How about Africa? Because people living with disabilities in Africa suffer an even greater vulnerability to even other countries that you may put in the category of being poorer countries in the world. We have seen climate-affected areas like South African provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, Mozambique, through the cyclones after cyclones, Malawi, Zimbabwe. A lot of people there do not have any support, even after a treaty signed through the United Nations where you are. So where do those countries stand? Where do these associations, where do people go to for assistance? Or are you looking or preparing for some different focus on Africa, particularly Sub-Saharan Africa, particularly? Thanks so much.
That's a really good question. So first, high level, our office, our mandate is global, so we are covering all regions of the world. Unfortunately, I wish we had the capacity to do every country. I mean, that would be the dream, but we are going to be visiting Africa, a couple countries in Africa in the fall. And to answer your question, the priorities will be the same. But again, to your point, there's a lot of countries that have, ratified the CRPD, for instance. And this is where we want to kind of support in terms of how do we actualize that into implementation. So, for instance, one of the countries we'll be visiting will be Mozambique. And ultimately, our goal in each country, we really tailor our outcomes and deliverables based on the need on the ground. But one need that is everywhere, that is needed everywhere, is, I would say, the narrative change, right? Because ultimately, as I mentioned, you can have all the policies, but who's going to implement the policies? It's the people. And how do we really create work and projects around narrative change? And that at times will need to be tailored based on the community or the region or the country we're in, but also it could be a project on a global scale as well. So definitely a good question. And yeah, thank you.
Can I just jump in on this African question, if I can, please? So basically, International Disability Alliance is a global network of organizations representing persons with disabilities. So one of our members is actually African Disability Forum, and this is a regional organization representing persons with disabilities. And we can say that there is a significant increase in the financial investment in disability rights in the continent, especially Sub-Saharan Africa, especially Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, but many other countries as well, for example, Nigeria, et cetera. And we see that there is more and more focus, attention from a global community. So I would advise, if we are really interested in this, to make a contact with African Disability Forum to see how we can better work maybe together. If you have any ideas, or if you want to connect some dots, Pearl, it will be great. But things are starting to shape, starting to move, and what we are seeing over the last couple of years is a very promising development. Simply, it is focus of international community is finally having some smaller results, but still visible results. There are many donors that are prioritizing disability in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we are documenting this and seeing that things are changing. But of course, you are very much right, Pearl. We are far away from a goal, but still there is some small level optimism.
Thank you so much.
Special Advisor Minkara, I wonder if you could talk about what the United States is doing to support people with disabilities who are impacted by conflict, including in Ukraine.
So, as I mentioned earlier, one of our focus is, crisis, and how do we really, first internally within the State Department, how do we mainstream and make sure that when we're responding to crisis, disability is mainstream into our efforts and our approach. And then also we're honing in on a few countries, and one of them is Ukraine, because it's a horrific crisis, like other crises as well. And what we've done, for instance, in Ukraine is in the initial moments of the crisis, we actually had organized a session with disability individuals and leaders and organizations on the ground in Ukraine to really hear what they're experiencing, what their challenges, and try to really connect those experiences and those challenges and what we're learning to our implementing partners, to other international agencies and organizations. And then we institutionalize a weekly and bi-weekly international NGO working group, so we can keep on sharing what's happening and sharing that back into our internal work. When we were in Geneva on March 14th, we also organized a meeting with our implementing partners to really try to understand from their perspective also what are the challenges they're seeing, and how to really make sure that they are incorporating and including persons with disabilities into their on the ground efforts, and really bridging that gap. So that's what we've been doing, and continuing the work and the conversation and dialogue. But ultimately, there's a long-term conversation. There's a long-term effort that we need to be thinking about. Is that, a lot of times you hear certain conversations and certain individuals saying, well, this is, we're doing our best, or everyone is suffering, right? But let me give you guys an example. When a crisis hit, And imagine you are in your building and you're not able to leave because of your disability. You're not able to leave your building or access evacuation, or when you access the evacuation, you get to a bomb shelter and it's not accessible. Let's say information is not accessible. Let's say when you get to the border, you're denied crossing the border because of certain criteria. This is what persons with disabilities are facing. We face access barriers across the board. We need to be addressing these. We need to be explicitly mentioning them. We need to be hearing what's happening on the ground, and we need to make sure that agencies and international organizations that are doing crisis response, disability organizations and individuals with disabilities are part of the process in that development of those crisis response. So there's a lot of work to be done, but everyone, what's important is everyone's having these conversations and we're moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just to
Go ahead, Glenn.
just to say that there will be a very good side event tomorrow morning, 8:15 in a Trusteeship Council room. So it is a rather large room. So I would like to invite you to come. We will need people visiting. It will be a lot of space there, but we are addressing a crisis in Ukraine. IDA is with number of partners, and we will be having speakers from the Ukraine Association of Persons with Disabilities directly speaking to the group. So I think it will be a very important event for me, maybe most important side event of this week. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that. Perhaps I can share the link for a live stream or the information for in-person attendance with the journalists who've participating today after this briefing. I want to invite anyone who's joined us in the Zoom to ask one last question before we turn to our speakers for closing remarks. If you have a question, please raise your virtual hand or go ahead in the chat function, and I'm happy to read it out loud. Okay, well, we appreciate your time, and I want to offer the floor back to the Special Advisor and Mr. Tok if you have closing comments, closing remarks.
Awesome. Thank you, Daphne. I want to thank Vlad for his leadership, and I want to thank all of you who are with us virtually. I will say the media world, the media sector, it's an important, actually, sector to really advance the rights of persons with disability, because narrative change where it happens is within the media as well. And how do we really get media to really be thinking about, bringing more of the voice of persons with disabilities and also bringing it through a value-based lens. And really, how do that will help us kind of disrupt the status quo and disrupt in many ways, the marginalization of persons with disabilities. So we look forward to continuing to partner up with you guys and really continuing this dialogue and this conversation. Thank you.
And to maybe continue in the same direction, specifically about media, I would like to invite you to just explore We the 15 campaign. We the 15, like a 15% of the world. I would kindly advise that you can visit the website to learn about this this very interesting campaign that was started last summer that reached already 6.2 billion people, which is a fantastic number, we expect a lot from this campaign. So I'm sure that you will find on that website something interesting. Thank you. And once again, to welcome US to the GLAAD co-chairmanship, and that we will be doing some great things together. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for making the time in your busy schedule this week. Good luck with the meetings later this week at the United Nations. Thank you for joining us. Today's briefing was on the record. A transcript will be made available as soon as it's ready. I will share it with everyone who participated. It will also be posted on the Foreign Press Center's website. So with that, thank you so much and good day.